is media entrepreneur John Rinehart. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, John.
Yeah, no worries, man. I'm excited to get into it.
I'm your host, Kevin.
And I'm your co-host, Brian.
And you're now tuned in to Coder Conversations. So yeah, John, just to get things started, tell us a little bit about yourself and your forays into media.
My forays into media. Gosh, I'll tell you right now, I didn't start off in media. I started off in music. That's what I started off in. Grew up in a small town. I was a seventh generation to grow up on a ranch out in Texas, and was a classically trained trumpet player. That's what I did. So studied underneath Jan Rollers of the San Antonio Symphony, and then my uncle was the fourth chair trumpet player of the Dallas Fort Worth. And so it always had this kind of like weird kind of like dichotomy of like cowboy and musician, classical musician from my mom's side. That wasn't the thing that people got. But I'd be out in the middle of the field like serenading the cows when I got kicked out of the house. But yeah, tech had always kind of been part of my life, and learning how to record. And then I kind of messed with media a little bit. I went off to school in Sydney, Australia. Realized I couldn't afford school here in the States. So moved overseas, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so got my degrees there, and then pretty quickly realized that I hated music. After like a couple of rounds of tours, and I was like, this thing sucks. Like, I don't know who wants to do this crap.
It's funny you say that, because I always wanted to be a session musician, and then I moved out to LA, and I had an indie band. We broke up, so then I became a session musician, and I really disliked it. I was working with people who were real jerks. It was not a good experience.
Well, in the session, you have to be on point.
Oh, on point.
Like you can't. There's no like, oh well, I felt a riff coming on. That's not what's.
No, you have to do exactly what they want. Exactly what they want. Like this one band, it was like Japanese jazz fusion, and none of them were. I mean, they were okay, but they wanted me to be exact. They wanted me to play everything exactly just how it was. And I'm like, look, like jazz fusion, this is pretty hard stuff. And you guys can't really play it yourselves. I even said that to them. They're like, oh, well, we're paying you, da-da-da-da-da. So it wasn't the best experience.
Yeah, and I kind of found the same thing in symphonies. It's very much like a great composer wrote this, and you are expected to sometimes sight read and hit it right on the money. And for a person that's more of a creative problem solver, that sucked. I loved creating music. I hated playing other people's crap.
Yeah.
So yeah. No. Just gonna dunk on the musicians. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're just a cog in a machine. Like somebody, like you mentioned, somebody else composes a great piece of music, and you're just there to bring that to life, but you're not really doing anything yourself in terms of creativity.
And I'm sure that there is some nuance there, because I mean, we all like serve somebody. Like, I don't care, like, where you are on the totem pole, but like I think you find meaning, you find nuance through time and through experience and through going through the grind. And in this case, like, music just wasn't a grind for me that I was willing to pay for.
So it sounds like, okay, you initially started out liking music in general, and then once you got into the industry of music, you really didn't like it. At what point did you say, okay, I'm done with this, I'm definitely pivoting?
There's some footage hanging around somewhere. You have to go dig it up, of me like standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and we had like bounced around the world to like 4 or 5 different countries, and I was so jet lagged I couldn't see straight. Because they were just meeting us at the airport, move us in, you take a shot, do our thing, then move on. And I'm sitting there and they're like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Look behind you." I'm like, "Still have no clue." All you know, I think that was kind of the moment I was like, I'm kind of burned out with this.
Yeah.
And came back to the States, was trying to figure out what to do next. And I'd done media, but everyone told me like there's no future in media. Like absolutely none. There's nothing here. It's a pipe dream. It's worse than music.
Nothing to see here. Yeah,
Yeah,
keep
nothing to
moving.
see here.
Keep
So I
keep it
started
moving.
working. Yeah, I started working in tech. I was like, maybe I'm smart enough to do this. And I was like, I've never really pushed myself here, so let's go. Like one of my first jobs was working for an ex IBM guy who had like started a computer shop, and I built computers for him, but I never like really sunk my teeth into it beyond like, hey, we're gonna build a custom computer, or like here are the parts, or like wipe this guy's wipe this guy's viruses and Trojans that he got from downloading too much stuff. Um, you know, I was like, yeah, it's small town tech. Maybe make a couple of servers every now and then.
Yeah.
But I started working with like a satellite company and got up to like tier 3, and then realized I hated corporate. Corporate was just as bad as music. And I jumped off, went to California, met my wife there. And then I was like, I'd always kind of like dabbled in film. I hadn't been like, it was something I did it was something, it's just something I just messed with.
Just a hobby.
And yeah, very much a hobby. And then I was like, I wonder if I could actually make a living out of this.
Right.
So I got my nurses was a nursing assistant, certificate, and then basically worked with quadriplegics during the day, and then at night I studied everything I could find on film and how to do it, and just started there, and then eventually made my way back to Texas and kept going.
Yeah, that seems like the journey for a lot of creatives. They find a stable job during the day and they use that to pay the bills. And in their free time, they work their, passion until the passion starts paying.
All right.
And I did that. When we came back to Texas, I was doing construction during the day, and then at night I was doing stuff. And I was trying to convince people in real estate at the time that real estate videos were the wave of the future, and no one would believe me. And so I was hopping on the phones on Fridays and Saturdays, and I called, I want to say 300 real estate agents in like the Austin, San Antonio area, like, hey, and no one was just like, no way, we're not paying for this, we're not doing this. And finally, like one person was like, I don't know. I'm like, cool, I'll do it for free. Just let me show you what this will look like. So they're like, fine, and they took me to this like $5 million little house that they had, and took shots there, showed them what it was, and they were like, absolutely, yes, 100%, we can see it. And that led into corporate. I ended up getting a call from Keller Williams Corporate International, and they have their headquarters is there in Austin. And there's this guy by the name of Olaf Reistrup, and he was a producer there. And he said, when I walked in, he said, are you an artist or are you a business person? And I was like, I have a business and it happens to be artistic. What do you want?
Yeah, what are you getting at?
Yeah, so he kind of was like, this isn't sexy work. It's, but it's, it'll pay. And so I started slowly kind of growing my team, and we just kept moving until we were doing right around 2,000 houses per year.
Wow.
Just cranking through films, man. And we were doing about 400 to 500 videos for Keller Williams Corporate, something like that.
Wow.
And it was a lot. And then we started like traveling in 2017. We started getting these different gigs, and we started going around the United States, hopping around everywhere. And there was I think we shot in 1 year, we did 165 cities in a year, was how many cities we actually filmed in. So it's
That's insane.
so bloody much. Um, we
Did you
did
like
that.
traveling? Did you like traveling at all or not so much?
Yeah, you know what? For the first 2 years, I thought it was pretty good. Because at the end of the first year, we'd spent almost 9 months on assignment. And I was like, I'm already paying for studio space and a place where, internet and all, and we had about like 15 employees at the time. And I'm like, why am I paying for all this overhead? I'm like, so in 2020, end of 2017, I basically was like, hey, everybody can go wherever they want to go. They can live wherever they want to live. We're going to figure out how to do a decentralized company structure.
Right.
And we sold the house, got out from underneath everything, and then we just went hotel to hotel, Airbnb to Airbnb. And we did that for almost 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, I was like, I never want to be in a hotel ever again. If I never have to check in from another Airbnb, that's great. So I was like, I want a bed where my head goes down the same place.
Every night.
So
yeah.
So we ended up buying like a 40-foot fifth wheel. And then we were like, cool, well, we're going to Chicago. And guys, everyone get ready. We're coming to Chicago, and we're going to be here for the next month and a half. And while we're here and we're doing all of our stuff in Chicago, Miami, you're the one coming next. And so we'd move everything down to Miami. And then we just kind of like traveled kind of gypsy circus until 2020 hit.
Wow.
And then that changed everything.
So COVID hits, and what was that experience like working in your field?
I remember I lost over $1 million worth of projects in 24 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Just
boom.
gone.
Gone.
Yeah. I remember calling my dad, and I was like, hey, I think this is going to get bad. And this was like in February of 2020. And I was like, I think this is going to get really bad. Do we still have that old piece of property? I can just pull this fifth wheel out and hang out here, like, away from everything. And he's like, yeah, just pull on in. So I went down to the ranch and just kind of like hung there through the rest of COVID. And, that was brutal.
Yeah.
The thing that saved us there was live streams. A lot of different companies were really pushing into live streaming, especially for like in-house tech and stuff like that, and sales generations, and so we were able to kind of fit inside that gap, and do a bunch of work for like Dell and stuff like that, and that's what kept us afloat.
Nice.
And and then I think everything else like after that has been kind of like an unraveling and then rebuilding. So we started Austin Film Crew a couple of years ago. A couple of my competitors and I were all sitting there like, we want to grow. What's the fastest way to scale? And then we're like, well, what if we just put all of our companies together?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
So we did that, and that's when I went. I was like, then all hell broke loose, which is always the case. You're trying to move into something bigger, deeper, faster, and all kinds of things went. But it led us all into this journey of kind of two things. Because we pushed into gaming, which was kind of fun. I'd never really done a lot of Unreal Engine cinematics and stuff, but that's a cool little field to do. And then the other thing that we pushed into, I was really interested in what does it look like to kind of merge the evolution of like media, technology, physical experiences into one. And so we started kind of messing with that. We had a couple different like projects where we had one where a company called and they were like, "Hey, we promised this to a client and we screwed up. They said yes last minute. We said, of course we can,
Right.
and we don't know what we're doing." It was for projection mapping. Do y'all know what that is?
I've heard about it, but
yeah,
if you
I've
could
heard of it.
elaborate on it.
Projection mapping is like taking this cup, and if you're trying to project onto, let's say, like this surface right here, anything that you would take a two-dimensional image and you would try to do, like, this would get distorted. There's these areas back here that would create shadows and problems like that. Projection mapping is you can be done in a lot of different ways, but basically what you're doing is you're taking LiDAR and creating a three-dimensional scan of this object, and then you're building your media on top of that using projection to then make it look either flat or make it actually look like it's part of this. So like in this case, like this cup, like if I wanted to project onto this handle right here and make it all of a sudden look like it was red hot. And
Right.
so then like this handle all of a sudden starts becoming like hot, and maybe it looks like steam is like coming up right here. There's lots of different use cases. One of the more interesting ones is if you've ever been to Disneyland, Disney World, and you've seen the castle light up at night,
Yeah.
and you've seen the characters fly out of the castle and go everywhere. That's projection mapping. So it's kind of this weird mixture of engineering, media, projection, because you also have to, like, you can't just like take a film and put it on there. You have to plan it because your medium, in this case, like your whatever your object is different. So you have to really think about how you're going to make that happen. So in this case, they called for this like massive logo, and they were just like, they're like, we're kind of screwed. How do you even do this? And
Right.
I had a really fantastic editor at the time named Daniel, and I was like, "Hey Daniel, like um, we just need like an hour. You research this bit, I'll research this bit, come back." And we came back and we're like, "Yeah, we know exactly how to do this." And then we did it. And so we done some other kind of like little operations and things like that. And then in let's see, we're in 2026. So in October of 2024, I was at the city called Gonzales. Gonzales is kind of like the Lexington of the Texas Revolution, all that kind of fun stuff. And they were talking about trying to get people into town, and I think I might have some ideas, right? Marketing pitches, and I pitched them like three different ideas, and this last one that I had was so outrageously stupid. I was like, "There's no way anyone's gonna say yes to this." And there was this pretty good sized memorial museum that was sitting there in Gonzales. It's 32 feet high by 96 feet long, and it doesn't sound too big, but you walk out and you're like, "Oh, no, 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 that's a fair sized building right there."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What if I took projectors and I did a projection mapping show onto there, but we made it permanent?" And then I also like there was about basically a football field, 90,000 square feet out in front with this like reflection pool. And I was like, and what we'll take speakers and we'll put them all the way out throughout this whole zone. And we'll put the subwoofers like underneath the ground and start using the ground as like an amplification system for the subs. and we'll use multiple projectors because it was too big for one projector, and we'll merge the images together, and we'll do like a whole story of Gonzales, the Alamo, and we're gonna shoot it real. Like, we're not gonna do animation like everybody else has always done,
Right.
because they were smart. Um, we're gonna we're gonna do it for real. We're gonna film it, and we'll do a world's first. And they go, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea." I'm like, "Really? Like, that's that's the idea you're going for?" You know, and they're like, "How much does that even cost?" I'm like, "I have no idea how much,
No idea.
you know, building an Imagineering system is going to do." So I came back and I was like, "I think we can do it for under 1,000,000." And I'm like, "I'm not gonna make any money on this, but I think this is like something really cool. Um, I think it's something like worth doing." And so then we started on to the whole process of the politics and all that kind of fun stuff to get funding, which is a whole thing in and of itself. And I called one of my buddies, who was his name is James Hurley. He's a former audio tech engineer for NASA, and I was like, I need help. Specifically with the sound, what I was realizing was that because the sound was so large, because the field was so large, we needed to almost create mono zones for people so that we didn't have an echo all the way along. And then the other thing that we had was within roughly 80 feet of the last end of the speakers, we had residential houses. So we
Oh,
needed
wow.
to figure out how to kill the audio before it got to the curb and also not have echo. And so then we came up with this idea of putting like all these different speakers really close together, basically zoning them off into smaller zones so that basically you were getting a full sound by proximity rather than by volume. So if we put like, two massive speakers at the front of the area, we'd have to blast it so it got to the back. But if the speakers were close to you, I didn't have to have them that loud.
I see.
So by proximity, they were a whole lot quieter. But while you're in these little zones, all the way around, it feels like you're in a movie theater. It feels loud. It's crazy. But by the time you hit the curb, you're underneath 60 dB. You're quieter than a car going by.
Wow.
Um, so then the other thing that we realized was that for projectors, I was like, hey, there have been a lot of other projectors out there, and like I realized there wasn't really an off-the-shelf projection mapping projector for outdoor permanent use. Everybody built their own everything. So, because a lot of what you had to deal with was like, okay, you have your projector, you have your media server, all that kind of fun stuff, like, built into, and then you need to make a box. And that box needs to protect the lens. It needs to deal with moisture. It needs to deal with heat and cold. And so I ended up finding this fantastic company out of Czech Republic, and we kind of like helped like pull this kind of like custom design for us, where we were basically using sim systems, like a little sim chip, running that in and basically powering a GPS unit. And so the sim allowed us to like download all of our stuff remotely. And then what we did is, because we had two projectors side by side, and we needed to make sure the clocks matched, right? Because you ended up having drift over, you know, maybe you could get away with a day ish,
Yeah.
but by about 16, 17 hours, like there's a little something going on in between the two. So basically, the GPS units were basically running a sync clock in between the two, projector units so that we didn't end up having to run a bunch of Ethernet underneath all this like historic stuff. And then it was just a matter of we were figuring out how to film something that really hadn't been filmed before, because we were filming for like a surface. So I wish I had something to. Okay, so let's say this is a window.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm shooting like a normal 2x3, or like a thirds aspect ratio, right? Well, I'd normally put someone's face right here, right? Because that's basically the part that I want people to kind of focus on, right? And or maybe over here. Well, that means that this area right here, that's like a window. Well, I need to cut around that. And if now I'm splitting the screen in half, and there's a projector here and a projector here, and there's also like stairs here in front, then we have to plan for what's going to happen. Sometimes you might be filming 4 or 5 things live at the same time and then projecting them back in different spots, but you blend it all together so it looks like one image.
Wow.
And so it starts kind of messing with your brain, and even like figuring out how to tell the story. Or even so there's a fantastic part, and people can go look up the trailer. It's Texas Legacy in Lights, and they have like the official trailer there, and you can see at one point we lit up the whole museum. So what we did was we actually started fire like down here at the bottom, and then built it, and then made it go up the edges and the edges of the doorways and the windows so that it looks like the whole building lights up on fire.
Wow.
It was really funny when we did a test for this. I was like late at night. I like drove my truck up onto the grounds, like propped up the projector, got a generator going, like we're out there, like projecting on the wall, and like we're sitting there, and some guy came like running out. And I was like, "How dare you light the museum on fire?" He was ready to throw hands. It was so funny. He was like all like hands all balled up. I'm like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Man, the museum's made of stone." Stone.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Made of stone. Something's not registering. Okay. So, and the other thing is that from basically, because we have like this huge area, and then we basically have a reflection pool down through the center here, you had the audiences kind of divided into 2 pieces, which was kind of fun. So what I decided to do is basically the story that if you sat on this side, was different than what you saw if you were on this side. So if you sat on here, you got one kind of story. If you sat back over here in the center at the back of the reflection pond, you got a different part of the story. If you were over here close up, everywhere was a different part of the story, so that it encouraged people to come back and do repeat viewings.
Oh, wow.
And then we put it all together. We shot the whole thing in 7 days. 34-minute film, 190-person cast and crew, horses, guns, explosions, cannons. We burned down a town. We did a whole flood. We were trying to figure out how to do the flood, and some of the summits, and on top of that, we're doing this like on threadbare budgets, right?
Okay.
So like we didn't have enough money to do costumes, like multiple sets of costumes. And so my wardrobe lady was like, "Look, like you cannot be messing this stuff up." And I'm like, "Well, the final shot is part of the runaway scrape, which was after the Alamo. Sam Houston came to Gonzales, this town, and was like, 'Hey, all your husbands and your sons have been killed in the Alamo. And Santa Anna and the Mexican army, they're coming. You got to leave. You need to run for the Louisiana border. You have 15 minutes." And then they burned the entire town down.
Wow.
And unfortunately for these women who are like in the midst of just incredible grief, it happens to be like the coldest, wettest spring on record for Texas. All the rivers are out of their banks. It is raining all the way to the Louisiana border. Most of the kids were walking up to their waist in water. If you were too young, you died. If you were old, you
Wow.
died. There wasn't, I mean, it was hell. It was absolute hell. So I knew that needed to be the last scene because whatever clothes that these ladies had on, they were going to be completely trashed. And so we decided to shoot the fire scene of burning down a town and having these ladies like walk through this with like their kids and all this kind of stuff, and then right after it shoot the flood scene in the same night. And so we had built a small town, and we basically ended up using like forced perspective to make so that when the cameras were set here, it looked like there was a lot more cities than a lot more cabins than there actually were.
Right.
We originally we thought we were going to run CGI completely for that, and my head of props was just like, she's like, please don't. Can we please do this for real? And I was just like,
it'd probably be pretty expensive, right?
That's exactly what I said. I was I wasn't even thinking that. I was like, which is more expensive? Do it in CGI and have like a 5-second shot and throw some fire bars up and call it good, or build like 15, 20 cabins, light them on fire. I can tell you which one's more expensive. And I said, I don't have money for logs and carpenters and all this stuff. And she's like, well, what if I can get you the logs? I was like, well, yeah, sure. If you can get me the materials, we'll do this. And she's like, cool, I'll be right back. She went around and found these different ranchers who had like cedar logs and posts that they like dug out of the ground for like old fences. And she was like, can we have these? And they'd have these just massive piles of them. They were just waiting for it to burn. They're like, yeah. So she came in, started loading up these massive, like 40-foot trailers, just full of logs, and started dumping them off out in the middle of this field. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get people to build this. So I like voluntold a couple of different people. I was like, hey, I need your help. And so we built like a forced perspective set. And then I was like, we don't have time to like wire it like we normally would, and put fire resistant gel on everything, and then run gas through it and then light it up so you can do multiple takes. We don't have that. We don't have the time. So when we light it on fire, that's it.
That's it.
Like, take the wagons, take the horses, take the people straight through the middle of the fire. That's all she wrote. And I'm like, then we're gonna go straight to the flood set. And they're like, oh, how are we gonna move the lights? And so I was like, we got these like massive telehandlers. And I was like, put the lights and the generators both on top of the telehandlers and strap them all down to the top forks. And then we're gonna drive those things straight out. Like over a half mile, right over to the next set.
Wow.
And then what we had done is there was a massive like diesel powered well that was used for irrigation about a mile from this set at the top of a hill. So we ran irrigation pipe down from over a mile and then built a series of dams. And then basically
it sounds like a lot of work.
This is dude, this is so much work. We had like a series of skid loaders, and so they would drive through and blow out, like you'd be like, all right, cool, knock out the first dam. They'd knock out the first dam, all the water would come rushing down the hill. We had like tilled up the bottom of the hill, and then we put 2 cranes at the bottom with water trucks to make the rain. And then I was like, ladies, you're just gonna walk straight through this area over and over again. We're gonna just kind of pick our lines, run the horses through, and then the place will flood. We'll get our shot and we knock out the next shot. and then we'd knock out, until we ran out of dams and water. And these poor women were walking through tilled up cow patties and falling into it.
Oh no.
It was a rough end to that day. And then you're trying to, like, again, match that all together as far as like tech wise. You're trying to get multiple different angles of all this, match it all up. And then what we ended up running was water simulations. And you can see like different shots of that online on Google. Or we did like water simulations using a model of the actual museum to create waterfalls that like go down and actually hit the geometry of the building and
Nice.
and splash down. So there you go, guys. I felt like I just like, here, you wanted a bunch of tech talk. You just got a bunch of tech talk.
No, that's amazing. Because when you hear like filmmaking, you think it's just cameras and point and shoot, but you're building this whole infrastructure to bring all of these visual effects to life.
I mean, that's pretty much like anything else, right? Someone's like, oh, well, I hook up the internet. I hook up my router to my Ethernet cord, and I put that into, and there's so much infrastructure behind that. AI is another good one right now. Everyone has it's the new magic box. It's the new magic CGI thing, and you're like, do you have any idea of the compute cycles that are going on to make this thing happen? So that's always interesting.
Yeah, I've been actually seeing some pretty interesting stuff with AI. Like they're using it to recreate dramas with animals, and it looks like legit, like some professional did it. So, I mean, I guess it's going to save a lot of time in certain aspects.
But look, there's no doubt it's coming, and
yeah,
it's my opinions of AI are I think mixed, which I think is pretty much almost everybody. Like we've been using it and experimenting with it, and I did a 5-minute short film the other day, and how we were kind of messing with it was actually like using our own artwork, doing our own drawings, and then we would basically take it and use AI to make multiple angles of our own drawings to save me from doing like 12 angles of a character. And then basically building our own data sets from that and with our own style, and then, making something cool. I mean, we did a 5-minute film in less than 24 hours that, at that level, gosh, it would have taken me 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
Normally. So it's I think it's going to make it very obvious to people who were the actual storytellers and who were the people that were just in it to make a buck because they knew a little bit more information than the general people, but they actually didn't really know how to tell good stories. They just knew how to create hype videos.
All right.
So I think there's going to be a lot of that.
I think that's pretty much what I hear from a lot of like high level, professionals or people that actually love their craft. Like they're using it as a tool to kind of accomplish a result that they already have. Like you mentioned, you already have the vision in your mind. You're not using it to generate slop. Just AI is like not doing everything for you, and you're just foisting that on the public.
Well, I mean, okay, when you guys have used it, have you found that you could just dive into a new subject that you knew absolutely nothing about and create something amazing? Or was it like, well, I already know exactly how to do this. I already know how to make this. I already know how to write this. I already have the skill set, and I can use this to get to my end goal faster. Like, I mean, which one have you, when y'all have used it, what have y'all seen?
Okay, so for me, for example, I use it, in editing the podcast or maybe doing some graphics, maybe use it to remove the background that I would otherwise do in like Paint Shop Pro or some other graphics editing program, or edit out the silences. No, pretty much does rote tasks that I would normally do, but saves me a ton of time. Like
Yeah, and are
I'm
you
not
using, like, Resolve, Premiere? What are you using?
for like the audio editing, I use I think it's Resound.
Mhm.
And then like I also use Hindenburg Pro to kind of do the audio mastering stuff. And there's just some really good audio plugins like DX Revive Pro, that's what it's called. But yeah, it can save a lot of time, but I don't like to let it overtake the creative process. Like I don't use it to, you know, touch the creative stuff, the human part.
Yeah, and then we use something called Opus Clips. I don't know if
Yep.
you ever heard of it. Yeah. So, kind of like you're saying, we would basically know what we want edited in whichever way, but Opus Clips can do that within, I don't know, minutes or 10, 15 minutes. And then it has all your short form content all prepped for you, in HD, and you could then just, upload it.
Yeah. I mean, we've used Opus Clip. I mean, but see, I think that's the twist, right? Is it's getting rid of the middle ground, right, stuff. Well, and I'll even take that back. I think it's actually getting rid of the entry level. So anything that's
Yeah.
like entry level, and I would actually say now, like even mid inside of media is gone. Like
Yep.
corporate's almost gone. Um, Now they still need like interviews done, stuff with their own people. However, I feel like a lot of the B-roll is gone, and it doesn't need to be there. Because you can honestly make it faster online and do it from scratch.
Right.
Unless it's like something like, I get it, like if it's a proprietary process of like how you ran like a specific packaging unit to save, the environment or something, and you wanted to show that off. But even then, like it's almost like with I kind of wonder if just like a DLSS 5. I don't know if y'all were seeing that, come out this
Yeah.
week.
I've seen it
I
for gaming, right? Like it
Yeah.
kind of takes the model and like makes it realistic, like passes AI filter over it.
Right. So what if I could basically take on my phone and I basically take a shot of this whole process, and I don't have to take it in good lighting, and I don't have to take it in to make it look good, and then I basically feed it into AI. AI relights it, retools it, makes it look good, and then spits the footage back out at me, basically kind of running a form of like a DSSS DLSS 5 kind of process, right? Like relighting, and is it real? No, but I mean, like but you have like we've had like, does it make it less real because we fed it through something versus like I took it into After Effects or, into Blender and I relit the model or, rebuilt the topology, and
Right.
it does I mean, we don't call that not real. It it's you know, I don't know.
I think like with like filming, I could see instead of having all these elaborate costumes and sets, you have very primitive, almost like green screen-esque type thing. People are dressed in real primitive outfits. They're doing all of the movements, and then you feed it to AI and say, okay, I want it to be themed like this. And the AI
Right.
puts the clothes in, the props and background.
I think you're still gonna have to have something to base that on. So, like, we're looking at, like, doing AI films and stuff like that, and one of the things that I push back into is I still want my wardrobe person, and I still want my props, and the whole reason is I can make something from AI, but just because I can make it with AI doesn't mean I have great taste.
Right.
And the more you have someone, like, really thinking deeply about what this character is wearing, which, I don't think I ever appreciated like wardrobe until I actually got onto like a real set and someone's like, I have 800 pieces of clothing, and they're tagging them, and they're going through the script, and they know every scene that this person is wearing this, this, and this, and they know why, and they've designed it that way. And that multi-layered approach, um, Alexa, turn off Office. I think that multi-layered approach is really what makes something special and artistic. It's the number of choices that you make in between concept and final that makes it something that's copyrightable, and that makes it something that is actually artistically driven. So these people that have had these jobs that have thought about this stuff, like they get a I think I don't know that I have the ability to think it all the way through and make it just like in film, there's like this concept, and I think it's probably true in more than just in life in general, right? Where they say that for every job that you take on, you diminish the end product by 20%. So if I'm director and producer, well, I've diminished by 20. I put on another I put on another hat. I'm now makeup and wardrobe. Well, I've now knocked it down another 40. Well, I'm also the sound guy. Make that another 40 because that's a really bad job. Oh, well, I'm also, special. There's they've spent all this time, and so the more brains that you can have, and you could try to do something like AI agents and like break them into sections and be like, well, you're wardrobe and you're this and you're that, and you could try. I don't know that you're going to end up with amazing. I don't know if you're going to end up with as an amazing piece, where you can focus on like the emotional cores and stuff like that without those people building that stuff for you.
Well, it makes me think back to childhood. I was born in '87, so I think back to my childhood, the Lion King, Beauty and the Beast. It's all hand drawn, right? So there's a certain, I don't know, certain human element, certain human flavor that's kind of thrown into the pot. And then you look at something like, Pixar and the movies that they've made, their animation studio, which I think are really cool, but to me, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different experience. What do you think about that?
Everything is always different, right? Whether we're talking about hand drawing, whether we're talking about shooting on cells, whether we're talking about 3D animation, or we're talking about like tweening, because if we're talking about 80s babies, then we were animating in Flash and tweening objects across the screen. There's something to that where you're just like, I think what it comes down is to how you tell the story. And I think the people that are making AI art, and I know some people are going to come for me in the comments and be like, there's no such thing. But right, but if you're already like an artist and you're using AI to create a base, right? Or you started with art and you brought it into Photoshop and you were making stuff, and there's this point where what makes the chair, okay, we keep using this cup. This is a very useful prop. So this cup, okay, so I got my rook here, and there's different forms of this rook, and really what it comes down to in the different chess sets, and it comes down to the story that I tell. So if I tell you that I spent 12 years thinking about the right weight for this rook because I wanted it to feel premium. And then we went through like 70 iterations for this thing. It makes it valuable. Now, this rook is mass manufactured, right?
Right.
And we went through a mass assembly line, probably in China. And if I tell you that, the value of this thing drops like a rock. And I think the same thing is kind of true in this stuff. If I tell you I've had a story in my head that I have never been able to get anybody to fund, but it's been there for like 20 years. And I had all these friends come together and we built it in AI and we used like all these different tools. And I walk you through the production process of building it. You have value for it. If I say, oh, well, I just wanted an action movie, and so I entered in 2 sentences on the AI and it just made it for me. Like that's those are the 2 competing narratives, right? And
Yeah.
and like it's I'm trying not to swear. It's it's BS, you know. It's one of those things where you're just kind of like this is what determines the value. And what determines the value is how you tell the story of how you got there and what the human intent was going in. So when we're talking about Pixar and animation and stuff like that, yeah, it has a totally different flavor. There's also
Yeah.
a ton of work that goes into that. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
the hand-drawn stuff?
Well, the hand drawn or the CGI. I mean, my gosh, you know, you get
Yeah.
in there like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, there's the animators who are sitting there like keyframing out like little piece by little piece. And then there's, you know, the guys that are working on environmentals and textures. And then there's the guys on the back end that are, you know, that are editing this stuff. And then there's the colorists and the writers and there's so many different iterations, and then there's the tech guys on the back that are the ones, like, actually making sure this thing is optimized enough so that it can actually render,
Right.
you know, and they're, like, running huge server farms, you know, and render farms so that it actually keeps up, you know, because I mean, there was stories that I remember we animated something back in 2006. We finished this whole film, and we realized we actually couldn't afford the electricity to render it. That was
Yeah.
you know, like, when your brain starts thinking like that, like, I couldn't afford the electricity to render it. And that's been one of the biggest things, like, with any kind of 3D has been the rendering, right? You get to the end, and you're like, "Oh, I made this." Heck, we hit it when we were just doing the Texas Legacy and Lights. I made this whole scene with like this Indian like coming out of the clouds and these like buffalo that was like chasing through like the mist, and they're like part of the, you know, they're part of the clouds, and the clouds like morph and it like turns into like a whole herd of cows, and then it morphs again, and then it turned into like a rocket ship. And dude, I got to the end. I hit render and Blender, and I came back like 36 hours, and it had done 1 frame.
Wow.
And I all of a sudden realized, I was like, "Okay, we're talking about, like, all these like, it was just the amount of bounces that were happening and the refractions that were happening because I was talking about a cloud, and it has all these bloody particles, and the light's bouncing around going through there." And I was like, "Oh my god, what are we gonna do?"
Yeah.
Um I think we had like 3 weeks, and I was like, well, if it's like, you know, 26 to 48 out, you know, to like 48 hours per frame, we have 24 frames to knock out per minute, and I have like a 5-minute sequence. We're talking months,
Wow.
you know, and then like I think I sent it off to a render farm, and they're like, it's going to be $200,000. Thank you.
I mean,
Like
is there a faster way to get it done, or not really?
Yes, no, there is, and we did kind of mess with that, which is, if you do remember like animation or flash animation, you remember there's tweening, right? You set up a keyframe and then you like roll it down like, 4 things, and maybe you'd make the hand like just kind of pass. It was simple, but it was tweening. So we decided to do the same thing with AI and basically be like, okay, so we'll render frame 1 and frame 12, and then we'll tween in between. So we have full control
Right.
over what happens in between here, right? It's not going to go off and into crazy land in a couple of frames. And so we use that to skip forward in our rendering process. And because basically AI, I mean, we're not talking about AGI, we're just talking about AI. So it's just a predictive model. So if I give it a small enough prediction, it's basically still tweening. I'm just telling you, it's a much more complex form, but it's basically what it is. So we used that as a way of leapfrogging ahead and dealing with the fact that we didn't have time to render these massive renders. And even then, we still had, I think what do we have, 6 or 8 computers running like 24/7 for 2 weeks, just to be able to get through the frames that we needed to render and then throw it back into AI and then take that and then upscale it and then make it all blend together and composite it.
So let me ask you this. I mean, what does a company like Pixar, what do they do to speed up this process? Or are they just running it on like 1,000 computers at once? How's that working?
I mean, dude, they have such massive data centers. I mean, they really do have massive, data centers just full of GPUs, running hardware acceleration over, 20 gig, fiber lines and just, running back and forth in between computers. And then on top of that, the computers that they have are probably running GPUs. They might have like 2, 3, 4 GPUs inside that are running 48 gigs of VRAM a piece.
Wow.
Per computer, 100
Kind of
animators.
hard to on an independent level, kind of hard to compete with.
You can't.
It's like you can't even. Yeah, you can't even.
It's like, all right, cool. You're in tech. Why don't you go take on Google? Go on. I'll be right over here. tell me how that works.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, let me know how that works for you.
But yeah, man, we're getting to the top of the hour, man. We could probably easily go another hour, so we have to get you back on to keep on diving in.
Sorry, I know I'm a chatterbox, but yeah, I like this stuff. This stuff is fun.
No, it's awesome, man. Before we get out of here,
some good stories in there for sure.
Before we get out of here, where can our audience find you at?
So they can find me at austinfilmcrew.com. They can find the project that we just did. That's texaslegacyandlights.com, or Texas Legacy and Lights. Just hit it up on Google. There's tons of articles about me, and yeah, you can look me up, John Franklin Rinehart on Google, and there's plenty of stuff out there.
Awesome. And did you have any closing thoughts?
Wasn't that enough? Are you gluttons for punishment? What is wrong with you?
Yes, we are.
No, guys, this has been fun. So, yeah, just thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all.